Welcome to the Recruitment Founders Podcast, the place to kickstart your journey to running a successful recruitment business. In each episode, you'll get knowledge, tips, and real-life stories to help you take your business from startup to whatever you want it to be. At Recruitment Founders Club, we'll show you how to follow a proven path to success, tap into a network of top-notch mentors, and join a community that thrives on collaboration and shared wins. You run the business, and we make sure you succeed.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Recruitment Founders Podcast, Mr. Elton.
Yeah.
Feeling good?
Yeah, I'm really excited as well. We've got a guest on with us today.
Yeah. Should we bring him straight in?
Yeah, let's do it. Juggernaut of the recruitment industry and, really well known and good friend of ours and got a lot of value to sort of give our listeners. And here he is, Mr. Mike Ames.
Mike Ames.
I've been called a lot of things, but never a juggernaut.
There you go.
I might be the size of one, but I don't think I've ever been called that. Pleasure to be here, boys.
Yeah, and a very smart Mike Ames we've got with us today.
This whole thing, I threw it on,
I was looking forward.
We're used to the wacky shirts, aren't we?
The wacky shirts, that'll be the next episode.
I thought coming to Moore Hall, I thought I should, dress up a little bit.
No, fair enough. Well, lovely to have you, Mike. And
good to be here.
in terms of today's, conversation, I'm really keen to just sort of understand a little bit about your sort of background in the industry for those listeners, probably very few that don't know you. We're going to touch on a little bit about one of the things that you've achieved, which is, an amazing achievement to have a double exit in recruitment, and talk about what that looks like, if at all, for aspiring entrepreneurs and recruitment owners. And also just talk about, your feel on where the market is and the future of industry, because I know you talk about that really passionately in your own material, and there's a lot of value in that, Mike. So I think that's really where I'd like today's conversation to go. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
No, let's get into it. I think the danger of today is with us not having a script. And
you can ask anything you like. I'll just answer it. That'd be fine. And when I'm rambling on, just go like that. Cut me out.
So as I say, for those listeners that they're probably few and far between that don't know who you are, Mike, do you want to give a bit of an introduction to yourself?
Sure thing. So I started in recruitment in 1988, and then 6 months after going into it, I'd been a computer programmer before that. We set up our first business together, me and the guy I was working for at this agency, which was a company called Software Knowledge. 18 months after that, he was killed in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
Which was horrendous, really. And I took over as the MD, but had no clear idea what to do at all. I'd never done anything like that. And he was always in that position, and everyone was comfortable with that. But there I was. Anyway, cut a long story short, Mike's legacy to us was that people really liked him. And gave us the benefit of the doubt, which was enough time for me to kind of catch up with things. Then we, along the journey, we set up an MSP business, which was one of the first in this country in 1994, I think, and a software house as well to do. We were IT contract business. We did more than just IT contract work. We did development and support. And then I sold it to some Americans in 1998. They were called Modis, and they've gone now. I think they're part of Adecco, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've all gone.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything stayed there for a couple of years, which was a nightmare. If you're looking to sell a business, try not to stay there if you can. It's horrendous. Left and had almost a nervous breakdown, really. I had to have a counsellor. Just got all this money, but no purpose in life. And so I had a counsellor, and at the last... she didn't say these words at the last session that we had, but this was the message. She said, "Get a job, Michael, and you'll be fine. I think we're done here."
Yeah.
So I started then my second business called Crimson, which still exists today. It's part of Harvey Nash now, because we sold that in 2017 to Harvey Nash, and they took it over, and they're still running it now. Apparently it's doing very well, so I'm very pleased about that. So that was my journey. And about 3 or 4 years into Crimson, I realised that I needed to do something else and started doing some unofficial coaching and some consultancy work. Yeah. And then from 2010, it's pretty much all I did. So now I run Blair, which is our recruitment consultancy.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned about the after the first sale with the counselling. I didn't know that about you. Someone I know through golf, he had a very large successful exit, his business when I think he was 46 or 47. And he recalls the first couple of years was great because he travelled the world and he did all the things that he said, got to do. And he found himself sort of, before he was 50, he'd kind of completed his bucket list.
Yeah.
Right. And he said, like, he looks at it and reflects now, he's 2 or 3 best friends. He offered them each £1 million to retire them. And they all kind of told him in a roundabout way to fuck off. Right? And the reason they did that, they said, like, well, we're your friends. We've known you forever. And he said, at the time, I thought I was just being helpful. What I actually realised I was doing was, in a selfish way, I wanted a 4-ball every week because I'd made my money. I wasn't doing anything. I was bored. And I went up the golf club. And with all due respect to the 70 to 80-year-olds that frequent the golf club in the week, I didn't really see myself in them. And I was just a bit bored. And
that sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
So I was 38 when I sold. So it was, all my friends worked. No one was interested. And I got to the stage where I only did one thing a day. If you rang me up and said, can we play golf on Tuesday? And I would say, oh, no, I'm having my hair cut that day. I had to space things out. It was a dark time for me, really.
Right.
But those boys at Crimson came and rescued me, which was nice. So
yeah.
I did the Crimson thing then.
It's interesting because I still think a lot of, a lot of founders, a lot of entrepreneurs, that is the default objective, isn't it? To exit,
yeah.
I think. And I think there's 2 sides to that. It's quite unachievable for most people, but actually, is it truly this utopia that it's made out to be? And
it can be. I had a business partner. There were 3 of us, and Mike died, and then there were 2 of us, and he retired then in 98 or 99 or whatever, and never worked since, and he's been very happy, but it wasn't for me. So I think you have to know yourself, really.
Yeah.
But I think on this build and sell question, scale for sale, I think it's either something that people specifically say we're going to build and sell in 5 years or whatever, which is what we did, or there's always that tacit understanding that's our exit, we're going to go. So they call it perpetual growth. So we're going to make business much bigger next year than it was this year, and then bigger again the year after. There's this belief that's what's going to happen, and that will end up in a sale. But statistically, it's not going to. It's less than 3% per year. Recruitment companies get sold. I think there's around about 35,000 recruitment companies, and I think about 104, I think it was, companies ended in some kind of deal, whether it was an MBO or a trade sale or a float. This isn't good stats, really. And there's a set of criteria. If you can't tick those boxes, you're never going to sell, ever.
Yeah, okay.
It doesn't matter. So I think that you really have to think about growing your business in a way that gives you options which aren't a sale to make yourself wealthy.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the 3-4-8 rule for recruitment companies? Have you heard of that?
Well, we've spoke about this.
Yeah, of course we did. Didn't we?
I think our listeners.
Shall I share that with
please
the
do,
viewers?
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so this is a rule of thumb rather than a rule. It takes about 3 years to establish a viable business. So that's a business that's making money, perhaps got 1 or 2 people, some processes, some active clients, a bit of money in the bank. It then takes another 4 years to turn that business into a high profit business that doesn't need you working in it all the time, and certainly not in delivery. And then if you run that business for another 8 years, that should make you independently wealthy. Take enough money out to make you independently wealthy. So from start to finish, 15 years. And I think if you view business in that way, you look to build a high profit business, safe, stable business. So it's not going to yo-yo up and down in terms of its revenues. It's a gradual slope upwards. Doesn't need you all the time. Ironically, not only will that give you the money that you need to build up your retirement fund, but actually there's a very good chance that someone will want to buy that off you because it's a high profit business. It doesn't need you all the time, particularly if you're niche. You've got a really strong niche, someone will buy that. So it's an irony, really. You're not building a business for sale. You're building it for a profit and lifestyle. But actually, someone is likely to buy it. But I couldn't do it now. I mean, people often ask me, could you do it again now? No way.
What's that, the energy that's required?
But no. Even if I was 28 years old again now, it was the best period for that kind of recruitment companies with the 90s.
Yeah.
There was no IR35.
Yeah.
There were no offshore businesses. contract people. People were developing their own software, not necessarily using packaged software. And if you wanted to speak to a manager, you rang him up on his landline and he answered it.
Yeah.
Easy, really. So we couldn't do that now. No way. I would be growing a profit lifestyle business now for sure.
Yeah.
And really focusing, drilling into profit, maximize the efficiency of your business. Because if you don't do that, what you end up doing is hiring people before the team you've already got is working at maximum productivity.
Yeah.
So you're building in waste into your business. And what happens is, there's a name for it. It's called a scissor company. So your turnover goes up, but your profits go down.
Yeah.
It's very common in recruitment.
Yeah.
Because they hire before they've got that business to where it needs to be. You should never do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we've spoke on, other conversations we've had around how, founders start a business and that first objective seems to be, I need to grow my team.
And that's the environment they've come from, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's, that those larger recruitment companies.
That's what they've seen happen.
Chase headcount,
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing. A good few years ago now, I had a conversation with someone who had started their own firm and a couple of years in, they sort of said to me, how many people have you got? And at the time, it was just me. I said, just me. No. I said, how many have you got? I said, well, we've gone from 8 to 15 this year. I said, great. Are you making more money than you did last year? No. I said, well, he said, and then he went, well, weren't you like MD of a business of nearly 30 people or whatever it was? I said, well, yeah, we did have a few people in the business. I said, but I'm making more money now than I was MD or whatever. I was general dog's body at times, of another business. So, I think the tail can wag the dog a little bit there.
Very much so. There's this question of perpetual growth businesses. Keep going, hire another 7 people. Madness, by the way. Never hire more than 10% of your workforce every 3 months. Never do that. Because it takes 3 months to properly onboard someone, get them up to a minimum level of productivity before you hire the next person.
Yeah.
You just hire big rafts of people, you're just going to burn money. Most of half of those people probably aren't going to work out in the way you expected. Big mess, don't do that. But I think there's this discussion now about, should I go for a perpetual growth business or should I go as a solopreneur and make more profit, have an easier life, not have to manage people? But actually, that in itself, as you well know, is quite hard because your income is capped. You can only earn so much.
Yeah.
You can do things to influence that, but excuse me, there's only so many hours in the day. You as a solopreneur, if you don't do it, it doesn't get done. If you have a bad month billing, everybody has a bad month because there's only you. There's nobody else in the team.
It's completely reliant upon your performance and your input.
And also it's quite lonely. It's quite a lonely existence. That concept of commercial loneliness, where you're surrounded by people that love you and want you to be successful, but they have no clue what it's like to be you. They don't understand. So I think this middle ground of saying, well, how much do I need to put in my retirement pot, which is a really good question. How much do I need to earn to pay off my debts? Because when you retire, you want no debts. How much do I need to take out and have the lifestyle that I want? How much free time do I want? As the business becomes more mature, I don't want to be working at 100 miles an hour. I want to take it easy. And those are questions that are best answered by being utterly fixated on profit. And by the way, profit comes from quality.
Yeah.
So you can't just get profit by cut corners. You've got to have a really good quality service. But how much money do I need to make in order to do all of these things? And one of those things is to hire someone. So I would start with a VA probably to start to take some of the admin tasks off you.
Yeah.
Then I would start with an offshore phone and filter resourcer, someone that can actually pick the phones. Someone in South Africa, say, can pick the phones up and talk to people. But they're only $2 or $3 grand a month or something, not vast amounts in the great scheme of things. So you're building a little team, and you're freeing your time up then to do the things that you should be doing. Your business superpower, which is probably going to be BD, bringing in good clients.
Yeah.
Probably going to be client care. Probably going to be looking after the business in terms of its direction. Probably some of its marketing. You're doing stuff that's going to add real value and have an impact on the business, rather than bringing up a candidate and saying, I've got this great job. So I think that's what I would do. You've got 3 years to do that. That's the first phase, is to get to that stage where you've got a viable business. And then you just drill down on profit. It really is very simple to do in comparison to a perpetual growth business.
Interesting.
Because as you quite rightly said, and it's so common in recruitment that people build businesses which produce a lot of turnover, but actually not much in the way of net profit. What's the point? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
So I think that, interestingly...
Yeah, because that's your vanity versus sanity, though, isn't it?
It's about profit.
Yeah.
Net profit, by the way, not GP, but net profit.
Yeah.
Not even EBIT. It's net profit that you're interested in.
Yeah.
That's the thing that makes the difference. And your fixation should be on that excellence of your delivery service, because that's what people buy. A client buys a shortlist. That's what they buy. And they buy a shortlist that if they chose one of them, that person would take the job. That's your job to create that shortlist with people who are suitable for that role, but also serious about that role. That's your job. If you do that really well, then you'll get another job, and people will talk about you. If you're average at that or not very good at all, in this market, you're going to die a death. So I think an obsession with delivery is the first point of call if you want to grow profits. Because when you win a client, you want to dominate it. You want to get as much business out of that client as possible. Because when you win some more business, you want it to add to the business you've already got, not replace business that you lost. That's important in growth. And it's important whether you're growing to sell or just growing to build a really good lifestyle business for yourself. It really comes down to that excellence of delivery.
If I just interject there, you talk about something that I don't think... Let me phrase this. I think most recruiters will assume they understand, but most won't. So you talk about when you get a good client, you want to dominate them. Okay. So the sort of point I raise to recruiters is when a lot of recruitment businesses are set up in verticals, okay, which trains a recruiter to only think about their needs, doesn't train them to think about a client's needs. So a lot of these recruiters that come out of larger companies into company ownership are not wired to think that way. They're just not, because they've recruited for sales directors, or they've recruited for mechanical engineers, or they've recruited for SAP project managers. Okay. And that is the way they work. Whereas actually, to dominate a client is the easiest. We talk about this becoming a farmer, not a hunter sort of thing. That's the way you build these high profit businesses.
I think that there's a misconception that account management and client care are the same thing, and they're very different. So account management is a subset of client care. Client care is what you do to make the client feel that he or she needs you in their life.
Yeah.
So it's what you do when there's no work, for example. It's what you do when there's a problem.
Yeah.
It's having a VOTC, voice of the customer program in your business that's going to encourage your clients to criticize you. Not just ask, how are we doing? Are we doing okay? Because I want the answer yes. So that's probably what I'll get. No, I'm going to put together a conversation where I'm going to encourage and actively encourage you to criticize me and what we do. And obviously, if there's more of you, criticize other people in the team, because I need to know where we need to improve. VOTC is a very powerful thing that people don't do. So if you're obsessed with quality in terms of what the client thinks, as opposed to quality in terms of your numbers, oh yeah, we've got a fill rate of X, or we've got a conversion rate of Y, which is important because that's about efficiency. But quality is what the client thinks. So you can do all of that. I once lost a £3 million client. It was a chocolate manufacturer in South Birmingham. And
I wonder who that is.
Yeah, we were the pre-supplier, so we got all the vacancies first, and we made a ton of money out of them. And the guy that was in charge of the resource control area, who's my contact there, we used to go every quarter, look at the numbers, the SLA, which we nailed the numbers. I was on the numbers all the time, so the delivery numbers, we were there. And then we go out for a big lunch, because people did in the 90s. And he was replaced by someone else, and she came in and said, just give us 6 weeks, Mike, to get my feet under the table and come and see me. So I went to see her, and she sacked me, just chucked us out, which was a surprise to me. And I'd got my little papers of SLA numbers, and she wasn't interested. No, she said, I went out to the hiring managers, and they really hate your people. They really hate it because they feel bullied sometimes. Everything's last minute. They make promises that they don't keep. So we were getting the numbers, but the experience of getting the numbers was not good. If I'd have run a VOTC program in those days, I'd have picked that up when it was an issue, before it became a problem, before it became the crisis that cost me the £3 million. I learned a big lesson from that. And so don't just assume because you're hitting the numbers or getting people in that you're doing a great job. If the client says you're doing a great job, then you are. Otherwise, you're not. So this is what I mean by commitment to excellence. This is something that I think you can do from day one. You don't have to be a big company to do this. In fact, I would argue you should do it from day one, because everything that you need to be an outstanding recruitment company is in the hearts and minds of your clients and your candidates.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, because that it's just such, now we're talking about it, it's such an obvious disconnect, isn't it, between the recruiter and the client. We had stories like that in my previous company, not to the sort of magnitude of a £3 million
I'm not proud of that, by the way, Jock. So
but what I learned, though, I made a massive kick at the time, but the aftermath was wasn't very nice after that.
But it was my fault. The guy that ran it was my fault because I put too much on him. So I take.
Yeah, but it's a disconnect, isn't it? Recruiters are so focused on get to the deal,
and the numbers. So I knew that our conversion ratios, which was part of the SLA, number of CVs we submitted to get the interviews and the offers, I knew they were good. I knew they were, because I got the numbers.
But the experience was crap.
The experience was terrible, and so I think. But I mean, if you do VOTC properly, and by the way, you can put this in the comments if you like as a link. We've got one of our shows, Mike Ames Recruitment Show, on VOTC, 45 minutes on it. So if you want, I can give you that.
Yeah,
it's on YouTube. But the point is that it's really important to close that loop, because when you're a small business, you can kind of close the loop for yourself. You can gauge it if you go and see people and talk to them. But when you get bigger, or you've got more clients and therefore less time, you lose it. And you may or may not be doing a great job.
I've gone through that myself, and sort of just on the journey again of growing my current business slightly. And I lose track of that at times. It's like, previously in my previous business several years ago, we started to grow and do well because me, my business partner, and the lead team were all brilliant recruiters, and we were really focused. Whether it was up in lights every day, we were just focused on delivering a great service. Okay, and that's what I think the majority of really good recruiters are like. Okay, but then when you start to grow, you transition really quickly into going from a recruiter that focuses on product and excellence to I'm running a business now, and you can lose track of, well, are these people that I'm growing in my team with, are they having the same focus on excellence? Am I projecting that, or am I actually now focusing them on deals and money? And actually, is that counterproductive? So as the focus of the business, as it grows to 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 heads, you go from a business that was founded as on the shoulders of an expert recruiter who was absolutely focused on the voice of the client and delivering, to now suddenly you're focusing your team on output.
And I think that's true. And I think that recruiters generally are very transactional people, because they have to be. If you're not transactional as a recruiter, chances are you're going to starve. You've got to be focused on getting the deal across and having the next deal ready to go, the next vacancy to work. And so there's no problem with that. But I hired a business coach after a proper nervous breakdown, weirdly. That's another story. In about 92, I had a real bad time. And so I had a business coach. And she said to me, you've got to be a business owner that does recruitment, not a recruiter that owns a business. There is a world of difference. And I understood what she said. I'm not stupid, but it took me about 18 months to really understand what she meant and to change my behaviour. Because when you own a business, you are a business owner. The vast majority of your time when you start up is about recruitment. It's about putting a bum on a seat, making some money. But you have to consider, metaphorically, two hats. You have your transactional hat, which is immediacy, very short window of operation. It's about the money, get it in, get the deal. It's about that. And then you have another hat, which is your business hat, and that's completely different. That's a much longer term horizon of thinking and planning. It's about how people feel, not necessarily how much money you make out of them.
Yeah.
It's about having a strategy and a plan which is going to achieve a goal that you've set for yourself, much more long term. And you need to learn to switch between the two, because many times with recruiters, if they don't see an instant benefit from something, they won't do it.
Yeah.
Because they're transactional. Whereas as a business owner, you might do something now that doesn't reap benefits for 18 months or 2 years. But as a business owner, that's what you do, because that's how you move your business forward. So it's very important to balance those two. You can't have 100% of one or the other. But as the business grows and you're working in the business less as a recruiter, you'll work on the business more. And we always say, you know, the more you work on your business today, the less you're going to need to work in your business tomorrow. And it's true. It's about planning and execution of a business that doesn't need you all the time. Yeah. My coach said, her name was Anne-Marie, she said, you built a business around you, whereas you should have built a business that didn't need you. And that struck a chord with me.
Yeah. Because
that's exactly
what it resonates with me. I mean, you talk about one of your big career lessons of losing a £3 million client. You know, I've talked to you, haven't I? You know, I spent 10 years in a business where we achieved what I call scale and fail, right? We built a business that grew. We built a business that made a lot of money, and convinced ourselves that we got a really good business because it made money. But actually what we'd done is create a business that was solely focused on the network of me and my business partner, right? And when we went through different life events, or the team around us went through different life events, we realised, hang on a minute, there's cracks everywhere in this business. The business was never going to be worth anything to anybody else, right?
Yeah, because if you took you and your business partner out, there was nothing else.
Within, you talk about when you exit, and you know, if someone had have bought our business off us within 12 months, it would have less than half the turnover, because the turnover came from key accounts where we were the key account director.
They would have had to tie you into the deal.
Exactly. And I look at that and I take so many learns out of that for myself.
I think it's interesting, you know, when you look at that, because for scale for sale, what you said is exactly true. When we sold the first business, a few months after, I went out with the guy that had bought us. And I asked him, I said, you could have bought anyone, but they came in at 100 miles an hour, several £1 million more than the closest buyer that we had, KPMG were talking to at the time. I said, why did you do that? And he said some very complimentary things about the team, but he said, you were a process over people business. We really like that. And I have to say, initially I was a little offended at that, because I'm a people person. I thought we were a people business. But what he meant was people were part of the process. They weren't the process, which was true. And it didn't matter at the end whether I went to work or not, quite frankly. It didn't make any difference on success.
Whereas we were the complete opposite, Mike.
Well, the interesting part about this, though, if you're growing a profit and lifestyle business, what you had is the best way to do it. But what you should have done, forgive me for saying that, I always hate people giving, you should have done was, but anyway, what you should have done was max out the profits, get the profits to the maximum that you could get from that team, run it and just take the money out. Just take the money out and become independently wealthy by the profits of the business rather than trying to sell it.
Yeah.
And then maybe you could have done an MBO at the end, positioned it, maybe not, I don't know. But that's what a PLW business is, profit, lifestyle and wealth business, is that you recognise that it is your network. And in a way, that makes the business safe, because if one of those people leaves, they don't have that network. They can't bring in business. So they're going to not be as successful elsewhere than they are with you. If you're growing a business to sell, that is the wrong thing to do. You need to build something that works without
you. Needed to know Mike 10, 15 years ago, mate. You might have been rich enough by now.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Yeah, it is what it is. No regrets, you know, it is what it is.
Learned lessons.
And like you've taken a lot of learnings out of, you know, being £3 million lighter. And I look at that and I made mistakes at 27, 28. You know, I actually look at the flip side of that. Is I could have kept that business for years and made those mistakes at a time in my life where I hadn't got as much time to put them straight. So you take out of this what you want to take out of it, don't you?
Yeah, you do. There was a learning experience, but focus on quality, focus on profit, And also, everybody that works for you should be dependent upon you because it's safe then. We often talk about high growth, high profit, and we should think about that and a machine to win clients and all the rest of it. But you also want a business that's safe. There's a definition of a safe business. So it needs to have some money in the bank. So if you don't make a few deals, you're cool. You're okay for 6 months. You're fine. It needs to have a good spread of client in the client estate. Good clients, large, medium, and small. So you've got that mix, preferably over more than one sector. So if a sector goes down a little bit, you're fine because you can put the effort in another sector. But the other thing is key dependencies. And when the Americans did the due diligence on the business, looking for ways to beat down the price they'd offered, they looked very much at key dependencies. They wanted to know a lot about where the business came from and the relationships that people had with clients. So they probably wouldn't have bought your business for that reason. When they did the due deal, it's like, ooh, that's not what we want. Luckily, we weren't quite like that for various reasons. But I think to build dependencies in so that people know if they go, they can't function as well outside of your business as they can inside, and then make their life happy, give them that feeling that they're valued and there's a route for them to move forward, they'll stay. And one of the things you need with a high profit business is a stable team. I'd sooner have a stable team of average recruiters any day of the week than I would a volatile team of high billers coming and going, because every time someone comes and goes, it costs you money. That's your money. Would have been profit otherwise. Yeah. So I think if you can build a stable team that depends upon you or the company for its success, you're on the way there.
It's funny. This person might listen to this podcast, so I won't name them. Going back a few years ago, I had a conversation with someone about their business, and it was growing really well. And they said something to me about how they've grown the business, which was so contrary to the way even I was thinking at the time. And they said, I said, how have you grown so successfully, so quickly? And he said, I stopped hiring anybody that billed more than 200 grand a year. He said, I wanted to build a team of people that build 120 to 180 grand a year. Yeah. And I went, right, now that's so contrary to everything, I was taught in my early career about what you look for. You look for the highest billers. I was a high biller, that's totally contrary to everything that I thought about. But when he broke it down and explained, well, cost per head on those average billers is X. Those average billers have, at 120 to 180, when you actually interview those people, they've typically been in the game 5 to 10 years and they do the same figures every year. They're
reliable.
They're reliable.
Less ego. Probably.
Less ego. They're not looking to go and, knock my door down for directorship and equity. They're not going to go and set up on their own.
And if they go, you can replace them relatively easily.
Correct. But actually, they almost stuck together like Lego blocks, building on top of each other, and it was a really interesting conversation.
That's what we did. We had some talented people like Rob Malaban from Crimson, Wendy Merrick from Jumar. They were in my team. But by and large, the majority of the people were average. And if you think about it statistically, if you think about a standard distribution curve, right, which applies to recruiters, you're going to get a few really bad ones, a few really good ones. The vast majority are going to be average.
Yeah, 100 to 100.
Below average or above average. They're average. So you need to build a business where average people can deliver outstanding results. And the way that you do that, processes to a certain extent. I'm not a big process guy in the sense that, being obsessed about them, but I think tools. So what a tool can do is amplify the person that uses it, use their natural ability. So I'm not necessarily talking about software. Software can do it sometimes, but there's lots of things that you can do which simplify, speed up, and standardize an activity. That's a tool. So a process is a tool because that's what it does.
Yeah.
And you put effort into getting people to use the tools that work. Suddenly, these average people are starting to deliver some outstanding results.
Yeah.
And also, to avoid 360s at all costs, don't go down that route. Because, most of the people that say they're good 360s aren't. They say that because that's what they say to get a job. But they're not. They either don't like working with the candidates or they don't like the BD. Sometimes they don't like either of those. They just want to do client care. So to move away from that to a layered model, I think that's really important. But also, if you lose a 360, you're going to lose a revenue stream. It's going to go. Whereas that's not safe. That if someone goes, you lost a function. I'll just replace that function.
So you wouldn't scale a business on a 360 model?
Absolutely not. It's so hard to do.
A lot of people would disagree with that.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't scale their businesses, do they?
Yeah.
They become yo-yo companies. They grow, they shrink, they grow, they shrink. And when you look at why they shrink, it's because a big biller or two is left. That's why. Almost always. I mean, sometimes it's the economy, and sometimes it's they've lost a big client, but mostly because one of their big billers has gone. No, I don't think so. That's not where we want to be.
So would you do more like a 180 model, like
It's a
client
layered
focus
model,
and
they call it.
campaign?
So you in a small business, you don't want to scale and sell. You just want a high profit business. So you're responsible as the owner for the strategic BD. So tactical BD is getting vacancies. It's vacancy scraping. That really is very hard to scale. Very hard to have a consistent revenue stream on that basis, because you either work in the vacancy or you're trying to get a vacancy. So you have a good month and a bad month and a good month and a bad month. That's not really going to work.
Yeah.
So what you want is to win higher value clients where there's a steady stream of vacancies that coming out of it that you can fill. That's what you want. And they're really hard to get. So you as the owner, that's your focus. It's not a time thing like tactical BD is, where you're on the phone and emailing people. It's not about that.
Yeah.
It's about building a relationship. And
sending CVs to leads and all that old stuff.
Yeah, that's what tactical BDs can do. And your recruiters can do that if they want to. That's fine. But you are focused on high-value clients. The other thing you focus on as the owner is the relationship with your clients, not just the ones that you manage, but the ones that they manage. Because if they leave, you need that relationship.
Yeah.
You need that tie. So they go, 6 months they can't trade there. In that 6 months, you're going to take the relationship that already exists and probably is going to exist in a non-transactional way. In other words, you're taking them to the cricket or for lunch or whatever. It's a nice relationship that you have with them, and you're going to build that into a transactional relationship. That's how you secure business. And people know that. If you go, there's no chance that you're going to work here again, because by the time you can trade with that company, I will have redominated that.
Yeah.
So you just watch yourself. So I think not to have 360s is much safer by a long chalk. And I would always recommend people to do that. So the owner does that, and then the people underneath it are either focused towards candidates or they're focused towards clients.
And a lot of our listeners are either current small company recruitment owners, or they are new to recruitment ownership, so they're solopreneur, or they're thinking about launching, which is obviously the sort of the purpose of RFC at its core. What would be your sort of top tips for a solopreneur in the modern day recruitment market?
I think, first of all, to understand how good you are at delivery based on numbers and based upon the feedback from your clients, not some gut feel that you have that you're pretty good at it. That's number one, because that's the single biggest, most important thing in this market, which is a lot different to the golden period of recruitment from 2011, 2022, where you could be average and make some money.
Yeah.
That's gone now. Those days are gone. So you've really got to be good at delivery, very good at it. I think the other thing is to think about those activities that somebody else who gets paid less could do for you. They always said, in fact, my first coach said, move everything down to the lowest possible pay grade without sacrificing quality and performance. And I've always remembered that. So if someone else who gets paid less can do something, delegate it or outsource it, get rid of it, and have a plan for that. Likewise, have a plan to target higher value clients. Short term, get the business from wherever you can. Get it from wherever. Past clients, send CVs out, do whatever it is that you do to make a book. But alongside that, when you've got your business owner's hat on as opposed to your recruiter's hat on, have a plan to win high value clients. Know what they look like, know where they are. Have something that systematically starts conversations with them. Have a product, an offering which is compelling. We call it a flavour of recruitment, because basic recruitment is the same. Get a vacancy, search databases, qualify, submit, fair enough. So what's your flavour of that? If that's vanilla, what flavour are you going to put in? What 5% of flavourings and additives are going to make your offering distinctive? Think about that, so that when you go to a client and they say, well, why should I use you? You can say, let me show you what this looks like. Yeah. And then have as much proof as you can get in video form of clients saying, I use this person and they said they'd do this and they do it and we love it. So you think of your USPs, your unique selling points, and you need videos out there that reinforce that what you've said is true. You buy what it says in the tin, that's what you're going to get. That's the basis for it. And then from that point onwards, you're keeping clients, you're winning clients, you're keeping clients. Then you can think, and making money, you can think about hiring someone if you want. If you're fed up of just doing everything as a solopreneur, then you can grow. But people want things to happen way too quickly.
Yeah.
They're way too quick. When we hired Anne-Marie, and I've had several business coaches, I've got one now actually, Alan. But when we started, I thought we'd have it done in 6 months, and she said 2 years probably. And I thought she was stringing it out, but we worked as fast as we could. Things just took time to change, people's attitudes, us to change various things that we had to do. And she worked for us about 22 months in the end, I think. But a recognition that when you've got your ownership hat on, time is much more extended. Your horizon of planning and implementation and return on investments that you're making is much longer than the end of the month when you're a recruiter.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, there's other things you can do, but that's what I would suggest.
Yeah.
Start at the core and then work out, constantly finding out how you can improve.
Thanks for that, Mike. And I think today's conversation has been brilliant. There's so much we could talk to you about, and we could probably sit here all day.
Yeah, great knowledge, great value,
and I think there's some real nuggets of absolute gold in there. And I think in terms of future conversations, we'd love to get you back on and unpack in more detail
to do that.
Other aspects, because you really are a top voice in the industry, and thank you so much.
Yeah, very, very well known. Everybody loves you. Everybody knows you and your shirts. And
I feel embarrassed now that I didn't come in a loud shirt. Next time I come on,
we'll get you on your shirt. And I think, look, just to finish off, we know you quite well, and your lifestyle now these days seems, very enviable for somebody like me. And Greg, what you've managed to provide yourself and your family, and you get to work with your daughter and your son now. Don't work Fridays, don't work Mondays, all that hard work.
Barely works in between. No.
But no, look, I think it's great. I think a lot of people would aspire to have, the career and the life that you've got, Mike. So massive respect to you.
I think anything is possible, and don't believe the hype. When you see people doing better than you on LinkedIn, they're probably not,
Yeah.
It's comparison is a thief of joy.
It is, don't do that. You just carry on, get the plan of one thing, work on it, then do the next thing, and eventually you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Great to see you.
You're very welcome, boys. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Recruitment Founders Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on your favourite podcast platform or YouTube so you never miss an episode. Connect with us on LinkedIn to join our community of founders and mentors, or visit our website to learn more about how we can help you launch, grow, and thrive in your recruitment business.